This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
The Hatters bag a hatful as Luton destroy Brighton. Liverpool score 4 against Chelsea and Darwin gets a quadruple of his own. And is there a new option in the Man City midfield? Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about draft FPL. I'm Dom Crofts, and today we take a look back at Gameweek 22 with just 2 games left to play, and crucially, we look ahead to Gameweek 23 with that waiver deadline looming fast. A reminder of the results so far: it all began on Tuesday evening at the City Ground, with Nottingham Forest losing 2-1 to Arsenal. Bukayo Saka owners were celebrating the most in that one, with his second goal in 3 games and all 3 bonus points as well. It was 0-0 at Craven Cottage between Fulham and Everton. Defence is very much on top in that one, and Jordan Pickford picked up 10 points to make him the most valuable goalkeeper in the game right now. Luton 4, Brighton 0 was the score at Kenilworth Road. Adebayo the hero in that one, and we will be talking about him in just a little bit. Crystal Palace edged a thriller at Selhurst Park against Sheffield United, with Eze and Elise doing the business for Palace. Ben Brereton Diaz also returned for the second time in as many games for Sheffield United. And at Villa Park, Newcastle United are back, a resurgent Toon army, putting Unai Emery's side to the sword, with Fabian Schär picking up 2 goals for Eddie Howe's side. On Wednesday, Manchester City made pretty easy work of Burnley. 3-1 it finished there. Julian Alvarez, Phil Foden and Kevin De Bruyne are all returning for Pep's men, but still only 5 clean sheets all season for Ederson & co. Ederson picked up a booking as well to rub further salt into the wound if you own him. Spurs 3, Brentford 2. Richarlison scoring his 7th goal in as many games for Spurs. Ivan Toney making it 2 in 2 since his return from suspension. And Liverpool 4, Chelsea 1. A very entertaining game of football, and that's before you even take into account the Darwin Nunes sideshow. That was absolute gold. He missed a penalty, he hit the woodwork 4 times, which is a Premier League record, and he bagged an assist as well. Pure Nunes. Tonight, Thursday as we record, it's West Ham against Bournemouth. Mohamed Kudus could return for the Hammers after Ghana were eliminated from the Africa Cup of Nations. And it's Wolves against Manchester United at Molineux, with Marcus Rashford owners hoping that all is forgiven after his Belfast shenanigans. So there is lots to talk about. But let's get going with Game Week 22's winners and losers.
The FPL Draft Zone, winners and losers.
Our first 2 winners today, Eberici Eze and Michael Elise. Palace's win over Sheffield United was only the 4th time Eze and Elise have started a Premier League game together this season. But when they do get together on the football field, they really know how to perform. Michael Elise has assisted Eze 7 times in the Premier League now. That is the joint most one Crystal Palace player has assisted a teammate in history. Injuries mean Eze has played more than 70 minutes just 12 times this season, but he has now got 5 goals for the campaign and 2 assists as well, so that is a pretty good return given his limited minutes. Michael Elise has played more than 70 minutes just 7 times, and yet in that time he's picked up 6 goals and 3 assists as well. Palace are not a good football team. I think we can all agree on that. Roy Hodgson may not see out the season as their manager. I think we can probably all agree on that. But with Eze and Elise in their team, there is always a chance they're going to pull something out of the bag. They did that this week, and that makes them very good additions to any draft squad. Their next set of fixtures are not bad either. They have the derby that isn't a derby this weekend away at Brighton, but then they have games at home to Chelsea, a match away at Everton, and then another home fixture against Burnley. If Eze and Elise can stay fit, and by the way, both are already flagged as doubts for the weekend, they could add to their points tallies in those next 4 games. Our next winner from Game Week 22 is Connor Bradley. Last week we said that Trent may not be rushed back into that Liverpool side with the Arsenal game on the horizon this weekend, and as a result, Bradley has kept his place in that starting 11, and on Wednesday, he delivered big time. A goal and 2 assists, a massive 21-point return, and he has given Jurgen Klopp a decision to make. Does Bradley keep his place in this Liverpool team? And if he does, what does it mean for Trent? Will he be pushed further forward into midfield? This weekend, Liverpool go to the Emirates Stadium to play Arsenal. Trent Alexander-Arnold has historically struggled against Gabriel Martinelli, and in the FA Cup tie between the two sides, Conor Bradley was brought off the bench to deal with the Brazilian, and deal with him he did. So if Klopp is picking his side on form, Conor Bradley has a very good shout of remaining in the side for this fixture and for games beyond this fixture as well. They have matches coming up against Burnley, Brentford and Nottingham Forest in their next 3. So if Bradley can retain his place in this Liverpool side, more points could be on the agenda for the Northern Irishman. If you're looking for a way into the Liverpool backline, particularly with a potential double coming up as well, Bradley could be worth bringing in and holding onto. A few more winners from this game week. Everton defenders. Last week we named our draft team of the season so far, and the likes of Jordan Pickford, Vitaly Mikalenko and James Tarkowski all made the cut, and against Fulham you saw why. Another clean sheet for the Toffees. In terms of defenders, Tarkowski now has the most clean sheets in the league alongside William Saliba. In terms of goalkeepers, Jordan Pickford has more clean sheets than any of his rivals as well. The England number 1 is now the leading point scorer in terms of goalkeepers, and his opposite number at Craven Cottage, Bernd Leno, is up to 3rd in those ranks. So if you have Everton defensive assets, or indeed if you have the Fulham number 1, you've got yourself some very reliable and very underrated defensive options. Those are our winners from Game Week 22. But with a winner, there always has to be a loser. And the losers this week, well, we can't look any further than Brighton and Hove Albion. We had to wait a long time for a clean sheet from the Seagulls. They then got 2 in a row and gave us all hope that they were a defensive option at last. But then they went to Kenilworth Road, and they were awful. Owners of Purvis Estupinan have enjoyed 3 returns in a row prior to this one, but against Luton he finished on 0 points. João Pedro picked up an injury that could rule him out of the weekend game against Crystal Palace, and they are still without the likes of Karu Matoma, Simon Adingra and Ansu Fati. They look very vulnerable. They looked terrible at Kenilworth Road, but with that derby game against Palace coming up, you would hope for a positive reaction from the Seagulls. The Pedro injury may give Evan Ferguson a chance in the starting 11, so if he is available in your waivers, he could be worth a 1-week punt. Brighton's fixtures are also pretty good over the next few weeks, and their AFCON and Asia Cup players are likely to be back for Game Week 25 at the very latest. Before that, they have games against Crystal Palace, Spurs away, Sheffield United away, and then Everton at home. So not a disastrous run of fixtures if you have already invested heavily in Brighton and Hove Albion. So those are your winners and your losers. But which player, if you own him, has single-handedly helped you win your game week? It is time to reveal this week's Hero of the Week.
Hero of the Week.
And there can only be one Hero of the Week this week, and that is Elijah Adebayo of Luton Town, their hat-trick hero against Brighton. Those 3 goals naturally also brought him 3 bonus points as well. He finished the game week on 17 points, and if you had him in your team, that means you have almost certainly won your matchup. Similarly, if you had him playing against your team, you have probably lost, and unfortunately I fall into that category, sadly. He's now got 8 goals for the season. He's got 6 goals in his last 7 games. Luton look particularly strong at Kenilworth Road, and that is where he has scored all but 1 of his goals. We've talked up Alfie Doughty over the last few weeks as a defensive option from Luton, but now the Hatters are giving us options up front as well. We've mentioned Carlton Morris in the past. He's done wonders with very limited game time for Luton. He got an assist in this game against Brighton as well. But Adebayo is a striking option well worth picking up if he is still available in your draft league. We mentioned his phenomenal record at home and how strong Luton look at Kenilworth Road. Well, 3 of their next 4 fixtures are at home, and those games are at home against teams like Sheffield United, Manchester United and Aston Villa. And given the form of those sides right now, there is nothing to fear. A, if you're a Luton Town fan, or B, if you're an owner of Elijah Adebayo, our hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
So if Adebayo is the footballing equivalent of Superman, who is the footballing equivalent of Lex Luthor? It is time to reveal Game Week 22's Supervillain of the Week.
Supervillain of the Week. Supervillain of the Week. Supervillain of the Week. Supervillain of the Week. I hate his guts.
And this week's arch nemesis hasn't even played a game of football yet and has still managed to achieve super villain status. Congratulations, some feat that. It's Marcus Rashford. Rashford, for the vast majority of this season, I think it's fair to say, has stunk the place up. He got only 2 goals in the first 19 game weeks of the season. He's shown something of a resurgence of late during the Christmas period and beyond with 2 goals and an assist. Patient Rashford owners finally starting to get some rewards for their faith in the England man. And then bang, he buggers off to Belfast and he goes on a 12-hour tequila bender. Then, according to reports, he passed out fully clothed in his hotel room at 3 a.m. in the morning, didn't turn up for training, and has caused all sorts of issues for his manager and his teammates. He's said to have been fined £650,000 for his actions, which I think makes it the most expensive tequila bender of all time. And there's a pretty good chance that he's going to be dropped from Manchester United's team for their trip to Wolves tonight. Owners of Rashford have now got a difficult dilemma on their hands. Do they stick with him and hope he shows a desire to make up for his behaviour in the best way possible? Or do they cut their losses and accept that his season is a write-off? The problem with ditching him is, if you're in a 9-team league or higher, it's very unlikely that there is anything significantly better than Rashford on the waivers. And rival managers right now are not going to want to touch him with a barge pole, so there's no chance of a trade either. So to me, it looks like it's probably an enforced hold for now. After Wolves, United play Villa, Luton and Fulham. So for managers who have got Marcus Rashford in their side, managers like me, those games seem like a chance to assess him and see if he is capable of getting his act together, and if he's not, whether or not he's worth ditching for literally anyone with a pulse. Marcus Rashford, footballer, author, food poverty hero, and now supervillain of the week.
Supervillain of the Week. Supervillain of the Week. Supervillain of the Week. Supervillain of the Week. I hate his guts.
And by the time you've listened to this, you will know if Rashford has made a stunning return to first-team duty against Wolves, or if he has indeed been dropped for someone else. If he has not performed against Wolves, perhaps his redemption story will come in Game Week 23. It is a super quick turnaround for this one. The full set of fixtures for you, kicking off with those Saturday games. It is Everton against Spurs at 12:30, followed by Brighton taking on Crystal Palace. The most uninspiring game of the weekend is probably at Turf Moor, where Burnley play Fulham. Newcastle take on informed Luton at St James's Park, and Sheffield United entertain Aston Villa, who are quite out of sorts right now. On Sunday, it's Bournemouth against Nottingham Forest, it's Chelsea against Wolves, Manchester United and Marcus Rashford are at home to West Ham United, and then it is Arsenal against Liverpool at the Emirates Stadium. Their fixtures finish on Monday night when Brentford entertain Manchester City. Because of the quick turnaround, the waiver deadline for Game Week 23 is at 11 a.m. on Friday, the 2nd of February. So no sooner are the fixtures finishing tonight on Thursday as we record, then you really need to turn your attention to those waivers. And with that in mind, let's not waste any more time and get on with this week's Waiver Wants.
The FPL Draft Zone. Waiver Wants.
Lots of options to discuss this week, and first up is Nottingham Forest striker Taiwo Awoniyi. He started the season like a house on fire at Forest. 3 goals and 2 assists in his first 5 matches. Those matches included games against Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester United, by the way. He is now fit, he is now back on the pitch for Forest, and he made a scoring return against Arsenal on Tuesday. He cost Nottingham Forest £17.5 million from Union Berlin at the beginning of last season. He got 10 goals in his first campaign in the Premier League. That came after a 20-goal season in the Bundesliga with Union Berlin. There is no question that Nottingham Forest are in a relegation dogfight. They could be facing a points penalty as well, so every match is going to matter for them, and that means they need their best players on the pitch doing it every single week, and Awoniyi is one of those players. If you have a striker like a Raul Jimenez in your side, or even an Odsonne Edouard, and Awoniyi is available on your waivers, in my opinion, he is an absolute must pick up. The next set of fixtures for Forest are not great. They go to Bournemouth this weekend, and then they have matches at home to Newcastle and West Ham, a trip to Villa, and then they're back at the City Ground for a game against Liverpool. Those matches, not ideal, but he has shown he can score against top teams already, and after that run, the fixtures are much more favourable. They take on Luton, Palace, and Fulham. Personally, I have the perennially injured and extremely frustrating to own Alexander Isak on my books, and I'm actually half tempted to move on from the Swede and bring in Awoniyi, but I suspect he'll be snapped up in my league before I even have the chance to make that decision. Awoniyi is our first waiver pick of the week, another striking option, and this one, I'll be honest, may sound like a joke, but bear with me, it's Neal Maupay. Now, Maupay is one of the most annoying players on the planet. There is absolutely no question about that. He annoyed James Maddison on Wednesday, and you've got to feel for James Maddison to be on the pitch as someone as annoying as Neal Maupay. But as well as being annoying and as well as annoying Maddison, he also scored on that pitch on Wednesday, and he scored the week before, and he assisted 2 games before that. In fact, he's played 8 games this season where he's played more than 45 minutes of football, and in that time he scored 4 goals and picked up 3 assists. He is having a honeymoon period back with his old lover, Brentford. And he's not going to be your first choice striker. I know that. He's probably not going to be your second choice striker unless you are desperate for some striking action. But if you have some deadwood filling up that 3rd striker slot in your draft team, perhaps Neal Maupay, annoying or not, is worth a waiver, particularly when you consider that Brentford have a double game week coming up in game week 25. Another waiver option this week, we mentioned him last week, and it is Emile Smith-Rowe. He was our one to watch last week, and he started Arsenal's win over Nottingham Forest on Tuesday. He did not make a massive impact in that game, but he did okay in that left 8 role, and at times he seemed to be playing even further up the pitch. At times he seemed to be playing as Arsenal's number 9 with Gabriel Jesus moving out to the left-hand side. Now, like Manchester City and like Liverpool, getting an Arsenal asset into your draft team is not easy, but ESR's minutes do seem to be steadily rising, and Arteta has said lots of positive things about him. I don't think he's going to start this weekend against Liverpool, but after that, there are games coming up against West Ham, Burnley, Sheffield United and Brentford for Arsenal, and I do expect him to earn quite a few starts in that run, particularly when you consider that the return of the Champions League is on the horizon. It was only 2 seasons ago, remember, that Emile Smith-Rowe hit double figures for Arsenal. He has been riddled with injuries since then, but if he can rediscover his best form, he has a real chance of getting into this Arsenal side on a regular basis. And if he does that, he could represent excellent value in your midfield as a potential 5th midfielder. Other players who made returns this week include Jacob Murphy, who returned to Newcastle's side and picked up 5 points against Aston Villa. We've talked about Alexander Isak already being perennially injured. He is injured again, which means there's every chance Anthony Gordon will fill that role up front unless Callum Wilson is going to return to the fold. And there's still question marks about his fitness. If Anthony Gordon does start up front, Jacob Murphy will almost certainly fill one of the 2 positions on the flank. It was only Murphy's 6th appearance of the season for Newcastle at Villa, but he is currently averaging 4.8 points per game right now. And Newcastle have some nice fixtures coming up. It's Luton at home this weekend, then they go to the City Ground to take on Nottingham Forest, and then they are back at St James's Park for a home game against Bournemouth. He has got a good chance of adding more points to his total over the next few weeks, particularly when you consider Newcastle's injury problems. Another player we've mentioned in the past is Ben Brereton Diaz. He is worth another shout out as well this week. He's got 2 goals in as many games for Sheffield United now. He is flagged for the weekend with a potential hamstring injury, but he is one to keep an eye on over the next few weeks. If he continues to get into that team and he continues to do damage for Sheffield United, then he could be another option on the waivers for your side. Moving to the back, Lisandro Martinez is back. He's fit. He's playing for Manchester United again, and if you need a defensive option, and if you have any faith that Manchester United are capable of keeping clean sheets, perhaps the Argentine is an option for you. To be fair to United, they have kept 6 clean sheets so far this season, which is both surprising and quite respectable. Their next run of games is okay as well. They've got Wolves, West Ham, Luton and Fulham in their next 5, and Martinez, of all the defenders in that squad, will be as nailed as anyone going forward. So he is another decent waiver option if you are lacking at the back. You also have decisions to make, of course, over the next few weeks on those AFCON and Asia Cup assets who are still away with their countries, but who will be returning in the next game week or 2. The likes of Karu Matoma, Simon Adingra, they're both away on international duty still and missing for Brighton. But Antoine Semenyo is back for Bournemouth after Ghana were knocked out of AFCON. He's classed as a striker in FPL. He's not exactly prolific. He's got 3 goals and 3 assists so far this season, which is less than inspiring, I think we can all agree. But Bournemouth's run is pretty good over the next few weeks. After West Ham, when he's likely to make his return, they have Nottingham Forest at home, they have Fulham away, and then they have 2 absolutely disgusting fixtures at Newcastle and at home to Manchester City. But it does get better after that. They then play Burnley, Sheffield United, Wolves, Everton, Crystal Palace and Luton. So you could do worse than getting in Semenyo as that rotating third forward option. And it is also worth thinking about Bournemouth defenders for the next few weeks as well. Now those are our waiver wants, but now it's time to talk trade targets.
The FPL Draft Zone. Trade targets.
And this week's trade target is a question that's been sent in on Twitter, or X, depending on whether or not you're Elon Musk, from Draw Rosenfeld, who is at Ross Draw. He says, would you trade Bukayo Saka for Heung-min Son? Now, Son is, of course, still away with South Korea at the moment, and in his absence, Richarlison has been playing like a demigod. He's been playing as Spurs' central striker. He has got 7 goals in 7 games, and that means, I suppose, there is a chance that when Son does return, he could revert to the left-hand side of that attack, which is where he spent much of the opening weeks of the season to little fanfare. Saka, meanwhile, is Mr. Consistent for Arsenal. He never really picks up mega hauls, but he's got 7 goals and 8 assists this season, and he has only missed 1 match. However, Son has 12 goals and 5 assists, and that is despite missing twice as many matches as Bukayo Saka. He remains 16 points clear of Saka at the top of the midfield points rankings, with only Salah having scored more points. And even if he does end up playing on the Tottenham left-hand side on occasion, I'm pretty sure that he will still share minutes centrally with Richarlison. So for me, as much as I love Bukayo Saka, and I love Bukayo Saka, given the choice, I would absolutely make that trade. Say goodbye to Bukayo and wander off into the sunset with Heung-min Son. And now, it's time for this.
The FPL Draft Zone. One to watch.
And this week's one to watch is a bit of a roll of the dice, if I'm honest, but it could be a way of getting into that sweet, sweet Manchester City side. And it is Matheus Nunes, their midfielder from Portugal. He was fantastic against Burnley, I thought. He got an assist and a bonus point. He finished with a total of 6 points in that one. But it was where he was playing that intrigued me the most. He was playing so far forward. His role in the side was likened to that of Ilkay Gundogan by famed footballing philosopher Robbie Savage on TNT. And of course, we all know that Gundogan was amazing in terms of his end product in that role. Now, Nunes' goal-scoring record throughout his career is absolutely terrible. He did not do the business at Sporting Lisbon, and he did not do the business at Wolves. But to be fair, before Gundogan rocked up at City, his goal-scoring record was pretty terrible too. He finished with 16 goals in 152 games during his time in the Bundesliga. And then, of course, he had that unbelievable season with City. So if Nunes can carve out a role for himself in this City starting 11, and if Pep continues to give him the freedom to fill the attacking spaces that he did at Burnley and that Gundogan did to such great effect a few seasons ago, I think Nunes could have a defining impact on their season. He has had to wait for his chance in that starting 11. He remains a gamble because there is still that risk of minutes. And of course, historically, I have scored more Premier League goals than him. That's a bit of an overstatement, but you get what I'm saying. But I liked what I saw against Burnley, and for me, Nunes is definitely one to watch. One other player I wanted to flag as well is David Datro Fofana of Burnley. Now, he joined the club on loan from Chelsea earlier this month. I don't think he would have signed if he wasn't guaranteed a lot of minutes. He came off the bench against Manchester City and he got an assist for their goal in that defeat. He was on loan at Union Berlin in the first half of the season and he only managed 1 goal in 12 appearances. So let's be honest, that's not great. And he's certainly not a player to rush into your side. But again, when you take into account that there are not that many great striking options in the Premier League right now, I think someone like Fofana is probably worth keeping maybe one eye on, maybe half an eye on, to see if he could become some sort of talismanic hero for Vincent Kompany's side. And that is almost it for today. Game Week 23 starts on Saturday. The deadline for those waivers is Friday at 11 a.m. So make sure you're in good shape ahead of that to give yourself the best chance of making it a winning weekend. We will return on Sunday with a look back at all the matches from the weekend. And in the meantime, please do not forget to subscribe to this pod. If you have other draft managers in your leagues who are unaware of us, please spread the word. And please, if you would be so kind, give us a review. 5 stars would be truly sensual. You can also follow us on social media. We're at FPL Draft Zone on Twitter and on Instagram. Until next time, good luck with all things draft, and bye for now.